Hey, and welcome to I'm Just Gonna Say It, episode 35, the very first edition of Proof for the Paranormal. Now again, I am aware that the correct name is Evidence for the Paranormal, but I'm just a sucker for acronyms. I mean, E for E, P for P, come on. This episode is a co-creation between me and the Dutch chapter of the Society for Psychical Research, or the SPR, founded in 1882 in the UK and quickly followed 2 years later by an American chapter, and in 1920 a Dutch chapter as well. Here we go with number 35. As I just said, in 1920 a Dutch chapter became a reality. Its first chairman was the famous Dutch philosopher and lawyer and the man who laid the foundations for psychology in the Netherlands, Gerard Heymans. Together with a psychiatrist called Weinberg and another pioneering psychologist known as Brugmans, Heymans had undertaken a sophisticated study into telepathy with a student named Van Dam in 1920. And I don't mean the Belgian version of Steven Seagal, but another guy called Van Dam. Within the international field of parapsychology, these experiments were, at that time, and even today, regarded as an excellent example of a successful and eloquent scientific investigation into paranormal phenomena. Moreover, viewed internationally, Dutch parapsychologists obtained academic positions very early on. In 1932, Paul Dietz became a non-salaried university lecturer at the University of Leiden. And in 1933 Wilhelm ten Haaf acquired a similar position in Utrecht. Although these positions were unpaid for, this changed after the Second World War. In 1951 ten Haaf was appointed as a salaried lecturer on parapsychology at Utrecht University, and from 1953 onward he held the first chair in parapsychology in the world at the same university. Ten Haaf remained on this chair until 1978 when he was succeeded by Henry van Praag. Now, just as in other countries, unfortunately, Dutch parapsychology seems to be steadily losing its foothold or ground in the 21st century. Just take a look at what Wikipedia says about parapsychology. Parapsychology is the study of alleged psychic phenomena, extrasensory perception, as in telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, psychokinesis, also known as telekinesis, and psychometry, and other paranormal claims, for example, related to near-death experiences, synchronicity, apparitional experiences, etc. It is considered to be pseudoscience by a vast majority of mainstream scientists, in part because, in addition to a lack of replicable empirical evidence, parapsychological claims simply cannot be true unless the rest of science isn't. Parapsychological research is largely conducted by private institutions in several countries and funded through private donations, and the subject almost never appears in mainstream science journals. Most papers about parapsychology are published in a small number of niche journals. Parapsychology has been criticized for continuing investigation despite being unable to provide convincing evidence for the existence of any psychic phenomena after more than a century of research. Now, this kind of pisses me off because that is just blatant nonsense, I can tell you. It also illustrates the nature of their arguments, which, if I generalize a lot, come down to this result can't be true, so your study has to be faulty. They also often rely on claims of fraud, which is a cop-out and an insulting one at that.
Homer, it's 2 a.m. What happened?
It was an alien march. It appeared in front of me and said, "Don't be afraid."
You been drinking?
No. Well, 10 beers. I'm telling you, I saw a creature from another planet.
Maybe you just dreamed it.
Oh, yeah? Well, when I came to, I was covered with a sticky, translucent goo. Explain that.
More sausage?
Dad, according to Junior Skeptic magazine, the chances are 175 million to 1 of another form of life actually coming in contact with ours.
So?
It's just that the people who claim they've seen aliens are always pathetic lowlifes with boring jobs. Oh, and you, Dad? No.
This brings us to the current reputation of the field of parapsychology as a pseudoscience. A good definition of pseudoscience would be any belief system or methodology which tries to gain legitimacy by wearing the trappings of science, but while failing to abide by the rigorous methodology and standards of evidence that are the marks of true science. And the funny thing is, parapsychology is one of the last fields of study you can blame for executing methodologic sloppiness, exactly because the field has always received so much criticism from skeptics. Because of this, researchers often make double or triple sure that their research is methodologically sound. Now, I'm talking about academic parapsychology here, not all those field researchers out there exploring haunted houses, for instance, like in the Travel Channel Ghost Adventures or something like that. Which also has its value, definitely, but they often purposefully use terms and a shadow of the methodology of science in an attempt to seem more credulous.
Down and grab my recorder to see if I can communicate with this entity.
What came through? What name are you connected to? Who brought you here? What is inside this house?
What name are you connected to?
I hear Zach crystal clear.
What's there?
As I ask this entity who it's connected to, it clearly says my full name.
What name are you connected to?
I hear Zach crystal clear.
We are all totally unprepared for what is about to be the most terrifying audio evidence we have ever collected.
What name are you connected to? Who brought you here?
What the? Okay. Are you kidding me right now? What was that?
Never heard that. Never.
What brought you here?
I've never heard that.
I have never in my life heard anything like that. Never.
Who brought you here?
Dude,
What the?
Oh, good, guys.
that's not human at all.
We quickly run outside to share this evidence with Julie Jordan, senior writer with People magazine, who has been waiting in the car.
What was that? What was it?
You're glad you weren't in there.
I didn't want to be in there.
No, you didn't.
You want to hear something that's going to blow your mind away?
What?
Somebody get in here, cameraman.
I got her face.
What name are you connected to? Who brought you here?
That's it.
You identify yourself.
Yeah.
Who brought you here?
Oh, God. I actually don't want to hear that anymore.
It just runs right. Just listen.
Who brought you here?
No one. That was
dead silent. Silent.
noise. Nobody. We were just right here.
Inside this house.
Holy.
Here's the exact moment when this loud demonic scream was captured, and it was absolutely silent to our ears.
Who brought you here?
However, they failed to abide by all these rules, so this could be deemed pseudoscience. This does not make their results any less baffling, by the way. It's their unwarranted conclusions you have to be careful with. I mean, they make all kinds of wild guesses and inferences about intentions of spirits and the nature of spirits, it being demons and whatnot. That seems to really get them off, by the way. Every pentagram is treated like a proof of a dark satanic cult or whatever. Anyway, back to parapsychology. Some famous examples of experiments in the field are telepathy experiments called Ganzfeld telepathy, Zener card experiments, precognition, random number generator psychokinesis experiments, RNG-PK, double slit experiment, PK experiments, and remote viewing experiments, for instance. Now, Ganzfeld is German for whole field and refers to a methodology where the participant's entire spectrum of sensory input is shut down, basically, by means of sensory deprivation. Which means they stick 2 half ping pong balls on your eyes with lights on them, they give you a headphone with static noise and stuff like that. Then they were asked to tell what another person in another room, usually related to them, were looking at or thinking about, by telling the researchers what came to mind. This robustly shows the significance of their guesses. In other words, they were reading the minds of the people in the other room. Zener card experiments. Zener cards are the cards with the plus, minus, square or triangle symbols on them. In these experiments, participants are asked to predict which card comes up if the researcher turns one over, one of the 5 cards which are laid out on the table. This too repeatedly has resulted in positive results. Still though, skeptics still categorize us with other dubitable fields such as phrenology.
Are you sure this is the woman you saw in the post office?
Absolutely. Who could forget such a monstrous visage? She has the sloping brow and cranial bumpy to the career criminal.
Sir, phrenology was dismissed as quackery 160 years ago.
Of course you'd say that. You have the brain pan of a stagecoach tilter.
Burns rules. I explained precognition in the previous episode, but in short, these experiments show that the brain reacts to stimuli that have not happened yet, predicting them by like a couple of 100 milliseconds. Here you see the reaction to different stimuli, one being neutral and one being emotional. Stimulus onset is at the vertical line, so the brain already reacts to stimuli before they appear, and they do so congruent with the type of stimulus that will follow. Pretty amazing, right? In RNG-PK experiments, people are asked to influence the outcome of a random number generator, which outputs zeros and ones in a 50-50 ratio if you let it do its thing. Nowadays, this is based on quantum random events, making them truly random for as far as that exists. Participants repeatedly show an ability to influence the outcome, skewing it to, for instance, 47 and 53%. Now this might sound like a small difference, but these results are statistically very significant. For more on the meaning of statistics, by the way, watch my video on the difference between evidence and proof. Dean Radin has done a lot of experiments where he asked participants to influence which slit an electron goes through in a double slit setup, with success. Let's look at a clip first that explains a regular double slit experiment.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. Physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. It was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never-world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
Amazing, right? So in radiant studies, participants managed to collapse the wave function by willing the electron through one or the other slit. Now, before I continue, I'm going to humbly ask you to like this video and to subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you are Dutch speaking, also, you have to take a look at the channel of the Dutch SPR, link in the description, and perhaps consider making a donation in order to help further research into the subject. More info on dutchspr.org. In remote viewing experiments, a medium is asked to convey where another person at a remote location is by describing images he or she is receiving. Certain people are eerily good at this, and in the 70s, Stanford University did a lot of research on this together with the CIA and the FBI, in the famous Stargate experiments, as they were called. More on this in 2 other episodes, links to which are found in the description. Now, the results were very striking in relation to the amount of details these mediums are able to give about the environment where the other person is located, almost drawing perfect maps. Some of these mediums, like Ingo Swann, have often been asked to for help by the police in investigations that lead to a dead end, and with success often. The military also used remote viewers during the Cold War era to spy on the Russians, again with eerily correct results. Now, if that isn't convincing evidence, as Wikipedia claims there exists a lack of, I don't know what is. Let's look at an old clip from the Stargate experiments.
The work we did at SRI involved things like finding a downed Russian airplane in North Africa with code books on it, locating a kidnapped American general in northern Italy, looking into a Soviet weapons factory in Soviet Siberia, describing the construction of a huge Soviet submarine in northern Russia, and we even looked on a Chinese atomic bomb test 3 days before it was scheduled to go off and described correctly that it was going to fail. So we did quite a lot of useful things for the government during our 23-year program. The ability we're talking about is a natural psychic ability that we all have in spite of what you may have heard to the contrary. People can quiet their mind and describe and experience what's happening in a distant place or in the future. And this has been talked about for thousands of years. Buddhists have a vast lore about what this is and how to do it and why it's desirable.
Wild stuff, huh? Fascinating. I want to close this episode by describing one more type of research into the experimenter effect. This shows that what a researcher expects to be the outcome when he or she is performing an experiment significantly alters the outcome in that direction. Now, this has been shown time and again in studies and was first demonstrated in 1966 by Robert Rosenthal. Besides from demonstrating the amazing power of the mind, it is also a major problem for empirical science in general, I mean, if the expectancy of the researcher influences the results, you could say that all experiments can be thrown in the bin. But a better way of putting it is that science's theorem and methodology need an update. More and more scientific fields are showing evidence that the human mind affects reality dramatically, and for all we know, it might even create it. What is for sure, though, is that the mind intrinsically has a connection to and influence on that which surrounds it. And on that note, we close this episode. Again, like, share and subscribe, also to the Dutch SPR channel. More info on them on dutchspr.org. If you wish to support me, there's a link to my Patreon page in the description, as well as a link to the channel merchandise store. The next episode will be another edition of E4E, Evidence for Extraterrestrials. Until then, love you all, take care of yourself and each other, stay healthy and remember to meditate in these times of transformation. Tot ziens!